Good morning.
Hey, Nelson. How you doing?
Hey, good, Michael.
Yeah. So, what time of day is it for you?
10 a.m.
Is it 10 a.m.? Right. Okay. Well, good
Just
morning.
dinner time.
Is it a morning beer? Yeah. Well, yeah. It's my evening beer, obviously. Because I don't drink before the sun goes down over the yard arm. Okay.
And morning tea.
So my debate. So morning tea. Yeah. Well, they're both stimulants, aren't they? Okay?
Caffeine-free, herbal.
Okay, so I'm going to kick off. Yeah, mine's caffeine free as well, actually. Yeah, I mean, coffee's bad for you, so I'll stick to beer. Okay, so I'm going to kick off with my opening statement, which is as follows. Since Emperor Constantine became the first Roman Christian emperor, the church has, on the whole, been a force for bad. This has manifested itself in such things as the persecution of nonconformists, the obliteration of pagan culture, the Crusades, the victimization of women for the sins of Eve, the witch trials of medieval and later times, the abuse of gays, the abuse of vulnerable young men and unmarried pregnant young women, the brainwashing of young minds via Sunday school, that they may become good Christian Zionists and thereby further the genocide of Palestinians because of all that promised land nonsense. But its biggest crime by far lies in its depriving me of my childhood Sundays when I could have been doing better things. So,
okay, well,
what do you say to that?
I would say that whether or not you're a Christian or not, I think the evidence of today's society shows that Christianity has been on whole a very bright piece of history, that it's created the Western society that we enjoy today. You could turn around. I'm looking behind you. I see quite a few books. Gutenberg, the printing press, was essentially made to print the Bible, right, and send it off to England. And so let me first say the difference between the Catholic Church and Christianity as a whole. The Catholic Church was more of a political institution. So I'm not Catholic. I'm not Anglican. I'm sort of anti-Catholic Church, not Catholic, but Catholic.
But Nelson, don't forget, this is about the church. It's not about Christianity.
Well, it says the church, and we're talking like the Christian church as a whole, the worldwide Catholic. So let me say, Catholic has two meanings. You have big Catholic, which is the Catholic Church, and then you have small c Catholic Church, or the universal church is what Catholic means, right?
Yeah, well, as you know, I mean, there was only one church in the old days, and that's what Catholic meant. It just, meant all embracing. So, it's kind of generically the church is what I mean.
Kick back against that, because the Catholic Church, I mean, it persecuted Christians more than it really persecuted anybody else. So, I mean, had this said the Catholic Church, as in the big Catholic Church has been on a whole a force for bad, I don't think so, but I wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, but that's.
Go ahead.
But I don't say that. I mean, you mean the Church of Rome. When you say the Catholic Church, you're meaning specifically the Church of Rome, aren't you? And I mean, the whole organization of Christian authority, really organized Christian authority, which really, to my mind, I mean, in the UK, that stems from St. Augustine's mission to it was 597, I think it was, when he came to Kent in England and brought Roman Christianity, or the Church of Rome, to England. So that's kind of like, for England, that's when it kicked off for me.
Yeah, I mean, England has a long history of battles between Protestant and the Catholic Church, right? I mean, you have the famous Spanish Armada, which was when Spain went around England to invade England and basically was ended. So, there you go. So there's a positive contribution of kind of the English church, I guess, when they kind of ended Spaniards' dominant role in the world because their armada sank, and they lost like most of the fortune they gained from the New World, and they were no longer a great power in the world anymore. So there's a positive contribution from the Anglican Church right there.
Well, I mean, okay, that's just a dispute between different factions of the church. You know, one could argue that it is still the church causing havoc, causing chaos, causing disputes, wars, death and destruction, etc. You know, I don't care which side you're on. It is still the church doing it. But just to pick you up on something you said a moment ago when you mentioned about the printing. I mean, straight away, you know, here we are. It's like, you know, you mentioned Gutenberg and the printing press of, you know, printing the original Bibles. Again, you know, the church had a what's the word? I can't think of one. A horrible sort of evil hand in all that, because, you know, even, you know, if you go back to, okay, so the Bible that we're talking about was a Latin text. Members of the church could only receive the map, so they couldn't really understand what it was. And of course, people like
kind of breaking up there.
Who was it? John Wycliffe. Sorry, it's a pretty bad. I'm getting my tech sorted. Hopefully tomorrow there's a guy coming to look at it. But you know, we're still in the Stone Age here in Old England.
That's what matters.
You know, you had people like John Wycliffe, you had the Lollards, you had Miles Coverdale. Here's a guy who translated the New Testament. The one in the 16th century. He was burnt at the stake. You know, so people who tried to, I can't, his name will come to me later, I'm sure, but you know, people who tried to translate and read the scriptures in their own mother tongue, they were you know, persecuted, executed, etc. I mean, the catalogue of abuse is just horrendous. You know, the power that the church exerted over people. Effectively stealing a tenth of all their wealth, and then pretending to sort of, you know, be benevolent in giving some of it back to them. Well, you know, it's like, oh great, you know, take my part of my crops and then give me some money back, and I have to be grateful for it. So you know, the list just goes on and on and on of the dreadful abuses the church has done.
Okay,
I'll tell you, when I finish speaking, I'll sit back like this, and then you speak. Okay.
I was just going to say on the tithing. So, you know, government takes a whole lot more than 10%, but you know, most people, they hate the church for their tithing, and tithing is not a requirement. It's you know, they ask for it, but they don't make you give it to. It's not like the church is going to come throw you in their dungeon if you don't pay it, but the government takes half, and your government takes like 75%.
They did in the old days.
I mean, you're essentially a slave to your government, so they take more than half of what you earn.
Well, it doesn't. But well, I don't disagree with you.
But most people, they don't like the church.
Wrong, but we're not arguing that.
Most people, they don't like the Catholic Church and tithing of 10%. Don't have a problem with forcing people to pay 95% of their income, right? I mean, that's kind of this.
Well, I don't. That's up to them. Yeah, but Nelson, it doesn't matter. That's up to them if they accept that. That's fine. I don't actually. I feel that you know, taxation by governments, a tax on wages, is actually evil and it's criminal. Okay, but that's a different debate. But your claim there about the tithing being a voluntary thing, no, it was actually obligatory. You know, we're not talking about you know, specific changes that are happening now in the 21st century. I'm talking about the church as a, you know, overall as a whole, you know, has been a force for bad. I'm talking about, you know, the centuries of old. You know, like I know I'm not saying that, you know, the church has been. I'm not saying it's been nothing but badness. Obviously, I obviously know that it does do some good things. my argument is, on the whole, it has
Okay,
been a
so
force for
let me
bad.
take up some of the things that you said. So there was the persecution. So Constantine, when he was crowned emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, that's the start of the Catholic Church. I know they say Peter was the start of the Catholic Church, but that's a misperception. And but let's just a couple of things you said. You said persecution. Now Christians were heavily persecuted, burned at the stake. You know, Nero lit them on fire to light his gardens. So the persecution down through history has been of Christians, very heavily of Christians. Now, when Constantine came in and took over, he kind of tried to marry the two, and so that's what I see most the Catholic religion as, is kind of a marrying of the pagan culture and the Christianity that existed before Constantine. So they didn't persecute the pagans. They actually brought them in and they tried to marry them tried to make a like harmonious mixed society, and it doesn't work, but that's what they tried to do. Ending pagan culture, I couldn't possibly see a more wonderful thing to do. I mean, the pagans sacrificed children, right? They burned kids to their pagan gods. They were notorious for doing just horrendous things. Victimization of women, I completely think it's the opposite. I'll say, in ancient cultures, a wife was the property of her husband. Aristotle said that a woman was somewhere between a free man and a slave. And according to Tim Keller in his Reasons for God on page 249, quote, it was extremely common for the Greco-Roman world to throw out new female infants to die from exposure because of the low status of women in society. The church forbade its members to do so. Greco-Roman society saw no value in an unmarried woman, and therefore it was illegal for a widow to go more than 2 years without remarrying. But Christianity was the first religion not to force widows to marry. So, I think Christianity actually freed women. You can look at the status of women in society. That's an outcome of Christianity, that they have an equal status to men. Because when Christianity was founded, or when it was created by Jesus, then women really had no role at all. They were just simple property, and he elevated women to the status of men. The first people to see the risen Christ were women. And back then, it took the testimony of two or more women to even be considered. But he said, no, he had women at the tomb and he used them as the testimony. So I think, Christianity really elevated women to the status of men, not the other way around.
But Nelson, but Nelson, that's Christianity. That's not the church necessarily. We're not debating Christianity.
Well, when you say the church, it's a very vague term. When I see the church, I didn't see the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church. I'm just seeing the Christian Church, and I'm just taking this because of our previous debates. I say, okay, Michael is an atheist and he is against the Christian Church, and so I just see this as a Christian church.
I'm not against the Christian church. I'm not necessarily against the Christian church. But anyway, let me just, before we go off too much, I just want to recap some of the things you just said and just counter some of the things. First of all, I'm not defending paganism either. Okay, the fact that pagans did pretty dreadful things as well. I'm not saying, oh yeah, that was good and Christianity came in and that was really bad. No, I'm not defending that either. Okay, the fact that Nero persecuted Christians as well, yeah, he did. I'm not disputing that, but that's not the issue. Because he did that, doesn't make it okay that the Christian church did far worse things at all. They both did bad things. Okay. What else have we got down here? Right, you said that women were, well, I don't think you used the word, but I think you effectively women were emancipated. Well, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but up until in the UK and in Britain until about 1880 something, women were not emancipated. Sorry, I'll have to check on the date, but it was sometime in I think the late 19th century. Where a woman's property was her husband's automatically. Did you have that in the, in your world, in the new world, as it were, rather than the
That
old world
the
of my world?
women's property was property of the man. That I'm not sure when that would have come about. I mean, yeah, there were certain roles of men and women, but women were never property of the man, as they were in pagan society and before Christianity. So I think to even if you say that women are that
Yeah,
everything they own actually is owned by their husband,
but
it's not to say that their husband owns the woman itself or herself, right?
yes, well, they have. Well, of course, they no,
And I'd also
that is actually rather, they were the property of men, under, in times of the Christian Church. Of course, they were very much that way. I mean, don't forget that, yours is a young country. My country has had, you know, 20, well, I don't know how many centuries, 17 centuries, I suppose, of, of the Christian Church. So we've been all through, the times of what we call the Anglo-Saxon times, the Dark Ages, the medieval times, the Middle Ages, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, all that sort of thing. A huge amount of history that's gone by, and thousands of thousands. I mean, have you read
but I'm
John
familiar
Fox's
with it, but
Book of
no, I haven't read
Martyrs,
it.
for instance?
But I've actually, I've been to England. I've been to England, and
Yeah. So
they had like a Christian
yeah.
burial stone, or a what do you call it? It's like a stone where they, I think they had the ashes or something, and it was like they estimate it's between 1 and 200 AD. So, I mean, Christianity goes back to England to potentially the first century, so almost immediately after.
Well, yeah, Saint Patrick, that's right. Who was an Anglo-Romanian, so he was sort of half English and half Roman, and then he went to Ireland and sort of took Christianity to Ireland, and then kind of brought, eventually, what was sort of Celtic Christianity came back to England by Saint Columbine. I don't actually call that the church, though. That is a form of very early Christianity, and then you had all the, I think in fact the year that Columbine died, St. Augustine came to England in 597, and then his first convert was King Ethelbert and all that sort of thing.
Well, women,
it obviously just goes on from there, but go on.
well, I would point to societies where Christianity has not been highly influential, and the treatment of women there. You can look at the treatment of people in general at India, where they have the class system and the untouchables, and these are people that are treated worse than garbage, right? You have China, where Christianity is growing, but under the atheistic communism, you have the single child policy, and there, if you had a baby girl, they just threw it in the garbage, or they drowned it, or they killed a lot of. In fact, the reason that's you would expect that you would have a 1-to-1 ratio of boys to girls, but they have a 3-to-2 ratio. So that means 1 in 3 girls was murdered or aborted. And these are societies that, and the Middle East, of course, that's terrible over there.
All
but these are societies
things.
without Christian influence.
Yeah.
So you compare that to the West that was founded on, and again, I'm in the United States, and so the United States was founded on Christian principles. You want to say whether or not it was founded on Christianity or not, but it was definitely founded on Christian principles, and the founding fathers all believed that Christianity had a significantly positive role.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Yes, and one of those things that the Christian Church implemented in your country was the confiscation of children from the Native Americans because they felt, they felt that, oh, we can't possibly leave the children with these savages, because they can't educate them in the word of Christ, etc. So they took them away. They did the same in Australia. They took children away from Aboriginals, and took them away and educated them. And I mean, it's dreadful things. Again, I'm not defending all the stuff that goes on in India and all over the world. It's, all to my mind, I mean, that's another debate, I guess. But I mean, if you're looking like, the religion being a force for bad, absolutely, but that's a different debate. You've had all the things about, the Christian, what are they called? The guys who go out to the Far East, what do they call them? The people, missionaries, and sort of like, show all the savages the ways of Christian church, etc. I mean, they've done horrible things. I mean, look at what they've done in South America. Cortez and that, slaughtering people. It's been millions and millions of people slaughtered, because, look, the 30 Years' War, for instance, in Europe, which was an absolutely dreadful time. And that is about, that's the church. One idea of religion by one church over another. The English civil wars of the 17th century, what we call the Great Rebellion. Again, all sparked by little nuances in the way that one church views things over another. I mean, there's more people were killed in the English civil wars than were killed in the First and Second World Wars combined. Absolutely dreadful. So, I stand by my case. That of course the church
if you're
has done
I'd
good,
point
but
out
I think
that
the bad
atheistic communism has killed more people just in the last century than all wars, including all religious wars, all religious conflicts, etc., combined in all of history. That's just a simple fact. I mean, they've killed 100 to 150 million people.
I don't believe that statistic. Well, it doesn't. Okay.
Well, these are Black Book of Communism. These are well-established figures.
Well, first of all, I don't believe your figures. But even if it did,
but it's atheistic communism. Communism is atheism.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because that's communism. That's another debate. It would be. It doesn't matter. Look, this debate is not atheism has killed more people than Christianity. That's not the debate. We're debating the church has been a force for bad overall. What other things, what's the word I'm looking for? What other forms of government, what other forms
I'm just pointing out
of authority do, is room for another debate. It has no bearing on whether I'm saying that the church has been a force for bad or not. Just because you can say, oh, well, we can't be bad,
I'm just pointing out
another system
what happens in the absence of the church, of the Christian church. What happens when you try to stamp out Christian influence? That's what you get. Nietzsche talked about it. I've read that in some of my debates before. But other things that Christianity has brought us, the university system. You go through Oxford, and in the United States, you go through all the top universities in the world. Most of them, when you enter, they have biblical verses over the entrance. Now, they've been taken over by secular atheists, but that doesn't mean that the fact that they were founded by Christians with the intent of teaching Scripture and teaching, in fact, a lot of people say the Catholic Church tried to kill Galileo because he was anti-religious or something, but he did it in the name of, science. Science is founded by Christianity. Christianity is the foundation of science. The idea was to go out and explore this great creation of God. And so there's a lot of myths surrounding what actually happened. Now, that's specifically a Pope issue, but the entire university system. So universities began in the Middle Ages. In addition, most of the world's greatest universities were started for Christian purposes. Right? Literacy and education for the masses, that's a Christian idea, so that people could read the Bible. but still, that was started, right? Hospitals. Most hospitals are Catholic hospitals.
For the for the for the masses. Yeah.
A long time ago.
Do you know what?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit like, you know, that film, The Life of Brian. Did you see that? Monty
Life's a
Python.
piece of S
Yeah.
when you think of it.
Do you know that bit in it where they're going like, you know, what have the Romans ever done for us? And it's like, well, they've brought law and order, and they're like, yes, okay, but what have the Romans ever done for us? They've brought like central heating. Yes, okay, but you know, all that sort of
yes.
thing.
What has the church ever done for us? Well, you know, they brought us an education system,
you know, the church
science,
has done some good things.
Charitable organizations. You look at all charitable organizations around the world; they have, whether it's the Red Cross, which was started, right? The Salvation Army. You know, name your major charitable organization. It was founded at least by a Christian, or with some kind of Christian or Catholic. Separation of political powers we have in the United States that kind of went around the world, right? You had a king, and then we rebelled, and we created our own system here, and most countries have kind of gone off that.
What? When was that?
Yeah. That's right.
So, like you're
Damn
not
right.
You're no longer one of our colonies.
Actually, more
Is that what you're
powerful
saying?
than you. So the
When did that
child
happen?
grew up and beat down its parents.
Shit.
That's right. The whole idea of individual liberty, you know, freedoms and individual rights comes from biblical scripture. Abolition of slavery. You know, that was the abolitionists were doing so using scripture, using the Bible. Now, I know that people want to, so I'm not saying that that.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, but equally, some
But you can't
some of the advocates of slavery have done it with the Bible in one hand and a whip in the other hand. Yeah, I mean, and look at that idiot bloody.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotcha. I can.
Yeah, you can.
I'm still here.
Hang on, you've disappeared. I'll just wait for you. Can you hear me still? Or? Yeah. I mean, you know, you look at you know, it's the thing about slavery. You know, it's when the thing that always gets me. It's like when you know, the Jews went into the promised land, and God said to Moses, you know, you can take slaves from all the tribes around you, but not of your own tribe. All that sort of thing, you know. So I mean, you know,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So I don't think that really holds water. Can you still hear me, Nelson? Because I can't see you anymore.
Okay, yeah,
you can. Okay, it's like it feels weird because like you've just gone all blank, but yeah, I know you're there. I can feel your presence. I can feel your presence. But here's that idiot. You know, is it John Hagee, the guy who, you know, he's that evangelist, that bloody Zionist, that idiot. Who stirs people up, and he's stirring up the most
about Israel?
idiotic people.
I know you're an Israel guy.
It's just persecution. The whole thing has been about power.
Well, that's like that's your issue. Right? That's your bag.
Israel guy. Yeah, he's the biggest. Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, that's, you know, that's, yeah, but that's pure evil to me. You know, all this Sunday school business. You know, it's brainwashing people to believe all that nonsense. At the end of the day, you know, it's all about power. I mean, look at like the Borgias, look at the Medicis, all that sort of thing. The Holy Roman Empire. It's just about taxing the people. You know, it's do as I say, not as I do. You know, I mean, you look at, I mean, up until, I don't know, let's think probably, I don't know. I mean, when were the Aboriginal kids taken from Australia? I think that wasn't it the 1950s? They were still doing that, weren't they? So I would have to say that only in about the last 100 years or less has the Christian church become, you know, almost like mended its ways and sort of started to look at things. And I mean, even then, I mean, like, okay, if you go back even sort of 20 years ago, the Christian church in Ireland, for instance, was still covering up child abuse. You know, what's going on? You know, it's like, So maybe it's like, okay, in the last 20 years, the Christian church has become a forceful good. Okay, fine. But what about the other, how many centuries have we had? 330 BC, do the math. You've had, well, lots
Well,
of
again,
centuries,
I mean, we
basically,
could talk about.
in Europe. I'm talking about, which obviously,
Sorry.
was there before America,
There,
because
there were a
obviously
lot of
America
bad
wasn't
things
there
that have
then, was it?
happened down through all of time.
Sorry, carry on.
Before Christianity, during Christianity, right? And you could say that some of it was maybe not fought by
During
the
Christianity,
church,
yes.
or maybe some of it was done and they would use Christianity as an excuse. But you're not going to be able to find actual excuses within the Christian ideals, right? Now, I would point out, you're saying that Christianity had a negative.
But that's the Christian ideals, though, Nelson. That's the Christian
Again, if we're
ideals, which is a
talking
different
the Catholic
thing.
Church,
That's not the
small c
church.
Catholic Church, the universal church.
I haven't got a problem
of
with Christian
Christianity.
ideals. We're not debating that.
Excuse me, of Christianity. Then I'm saying that the influence of Christianity around the world has been a net enormous positive. And again, I have an article here that lists 21 major things. So we can talk about.
I know you are.
Development of art and music. Some of the greatest artists of all time, Michelangelo, Leonardo, all these. They were funded by the church, right?
Yes, they have. Yes, they no, I would say that they
well, they were funded by the church. I mean, they were paid by the church, and they're great art. The David, right? David is a biblical character.
What?
I mean, have you seen the David? Have you seen the Last Supper? These great pieces of art that are, without Christianity, they don't exist.
Da Vinci.
Well, yes. So again, I'm saying the.
Well, but we're not debating Christianity, But okay, I'll give you an example actually of where the church. I'll give you an example of where the church has undue influence over art. There's a famous picture by Hans Holbein. Yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever church it is doesn't bother me. As long as it is the Catholic Church with a small c. The church, the Christian church. The painting I'm referring to is by Hans Holbein, and it's called The Ambassadors, and it's situated in the National Gallery in Trafalgar Square in London. Are you familiar with that picture? Painted around
National Gallery of London,
36, I think.
1530. Okay. Yeah, 1533 painting by Hans. So I've seen that painting before.
Yeah, you're Googling it, aren't you?
Yeah. Closer than I would have been.
1533. Okay, all right. I'm out by 3 years. Okay, yeah, sue me. Yeah. Okay. Are you looking at a picture on your screen of that? Okay, right.
Yes. It does look familiar.
Have you seen that picture before? The Ambassadors. Okay. Yeah, I mean, have you ever looked at all the symbolism in it and why that symbolism exists?
It doesn't say who it is. I think yeah. Okay.
You'll see that there's a Lutheran prayer book. There's a little tiny cross hidden up on the left-hand side. It's basically two gentlemen, Bishop George de Selve and Jean de Danteville, I think it was, who were ambassadors who came to King Henry VIII's court to try to mend fences when he was, the divorce from Catherine of Aragon was on the cards. It is full of what was then called. Symbolism relating to I won't use the word Protestantism because it wasn't around at the time. It was simply called the New Learning. So it's kind of like it's Calvinism, Lutheran references. But Holbein was unable to say what he wanted to say. He had to put things into that painting in a very subtle way. I mean, I read a whole book just about that painting once, and it's very interesting. But it just shows the sort of power that the church had, because if he had have said what he wanted to say, and it was basically sort of saying, it was saying, look, this is how the world is changing. This is the new learning that's coming in. This is the you know, the Lutheran doctrine. This is the Calvinist doctrine. Let's explore these things. He'd have been carted off, and you know, just, well, when I say carted off to Smithfield, Smithfield is a place in London where they used to burn heretics, which is where Queen Mary burnt loads of heretics, and you know, your man John Fox recorded it all in his Book of Martyrs. So you know, there we are. I mean, you know, there's an example of, it's kind of like, yes, the church likes art, but as long as it's all sort of cherubims and angels and all that kind of thing, and you know, the Virgin Mary, but you know, anything that criticizes the church, we are going to kill you for it.
Well, again, this is whether or not, I mean, if you had the Catholic Church, even so, I think the Catholic Church has been, even though I'm not Catholic, I'm sort of anti-Catholic Church, I think that it has been, on the whole, a positive force in society, even as it has, it has tried to stamp out Christianity, and it's basically trying to monopolize the world, right? And so I think the Catholic Church today is an apostate church, and the Pope is a despicable human being. He's a disgusting human being. You know, he's an antichrist figure, so he's denied basic Christian doctrine. He's all kinds of horrible things. Okay, so yes.
Okay.
I'm saying
you're not fighting your corner here, are you? You're not fighting your corner because you're just denigrating the church. Yeah, but hang on. No, it doesn't matter. You are now
says that.
doing
everybody
what, you know, like
that.
Oh, you know, mine is the true religion. You're doing all that old thing, you know, that everybody who's religious seems to do. Absolutely,
but that's what everybody says.
They're all like,
everybody believes that.
Like,
why would you believe in a religion or anything if you didn't believe it was the true religion? You know, I watched a debate between an old debate between Kokol and Chopra, and Deepak Chopra was just a laughable figure. He's there and saying, buy my books because I'm totally unsure. I'm not really sure of anything, but I'm sure you should buy my books, but I'm not really sure of what I say, whether or not it's true, or, you know, just ridiculous things, absurd. Yeah, it's like, I'm absolutely positive that I have no
idea. I'll buy that book. Yeah. But even so, but you have just denigrated.
Well, you say the church. I don't see this as the church, as if there's only one church. If you had said the Catholic Church,
and it is the
I think that would have been a little more clear. But I'm talking about the Christian, the church, as in the Christian Universal Church.
No,
so
it is. Look,
I mean, if you read the. You know the Protestant.
You know as well as I do
the theme where they say the Catholic, the Universal Catholic Church in the Protestant Church or the Presbyterian Church. They sing the what's it called, and they say that, anyways, they say we believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Catholic Church, and they use small c, right? And because they're not Catholic, but it means it means universal church, and that's when we say Catholic Church. Or I don't say it, but
but Nelson, the point is, though, that you have denigrated the church, and you know as well as I do that there was no Catholic Protestant church up until the 16th century. Okay, so the church that you are just slagging off was established for 12 centuries. Okay, 12 centuries. That's an awful long time. So since then, you know, as I say, you know, my argument is on the whole. So you're admitting then that for 12 centuries or so, that it's been a force for bad.
The one that sits in Rome, the unholy Roman Catholic Church. But even then, they have had a positive influence on society, on the world on a whole.
Yes,
so all the terrible. And I think Tom Woods has a great book called The Market in the Church.
When
1517 was when Luther nailed his thesis to the Wittenberg.
Worse, rather.
So here we are, 500th anniversary.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. So are you saying that before, Nelson, are you saying that before the Reformation that the Church of Rome was okay? Because you've
No,
just
I think
slagged
it
it
was a
off. You're
mix,
saying that was it
but
okay
that's
before the
specifically the
Reformation?
Catholic Church, and I still say that they have had positive influences on the world as a whole, even before that.
But it's
But there was a Christian. I mean, they were persecuting.
look, yes, but Nelson, please look. Come on. You keep
Well,
saying
no, that
that
wasn't the
was
only church. There
that
were
was
people outside of it.
that was the only church. They didn't say
Not
this is the
really, because
church.
there were
That
little
was
sects
the
outside of
church.
it. There were, 1610. You have
What
the
people?
King James of Christianity. So there was people within the
Of
Catholic
what?
Church that were not.
But
No,
that's
even before the
but
Reformation,
that's
there were still
after the
people that
Reformation.
didn't fully
That is after the
adhere to all
Reformation.
of the Catholic Church principles. I mean, Luther himself.
Yes, there were absolutely, and they were
Well, there
executed
were a lot.
for it. They were
Yeah, I mean,
executed.
there were a
You
lot of
talking
people.
about the
I think
Lollards and people and that sort
Wycliffe
of
was
thing?
the one that
John
was.
Wycliffe's followers.
I think Wycliffe was. John Wycliffe
Yeah,
was.
and they were
I think his
executed for
bones
it.
were burned after he died. He died, and then yeah.
No, I don't mean him. I mean I meant his followers were executed for it, not necessarily him. No, but he was certainly hunted, and like they caught him. But I don't get it. It doesn't add up. You're saying that the Pope I think you
Oh no,
said
no,
the devil incarnate. Is that what you
is
said? Something like that.
Antichrist. The Pope,
So if you're
Frankie.
the Antichrist, he is the Antichrist. Okay, so
No, he is
become
Antichrist.
when
So
did
there,
he become the
so let me
Antichrist,
just say that
Nelson?
there is the
Please,
Antichrist, which is in the
please
end of
advise.
time, and then there is the spirit of Antichrist, which is anybody that denies Jesus is the Christ. So it's not saying you're a wicked, horrible, worst person ever if you're anti. It just means you deny Jesus as the Christ, and he denies Jesus as the Christ, and so he is in the spirit of. Not, I'm not saying he is he is one of many.
What you mean? Just
Well, most popes, but yes, the present pope definitely.
is this just the
The
present
present
Pope
pope
that
absolutely. But I
you're
think the last
talking
one,
about?
the last couple have been okay.
Most
I
popes,
point Tom Woods
but
as the market
okay,
in the church, and he talks about
most
the benefit. Now he's Catholic, and he talks about the
so
benefits the Catholic Church has given to society, and some of them have been the market
okay.
economy.
Okay. Well, you just said so. You just confirmed there. You're saying that most popes have been antichrist, yeah, or like bad, whatever. Okay, so most popes, you're admitting that most popes represented the church. Okay, let's not forget we had only one church in the world, and that was the Church of Rome. You didn't have to say, which church do you belong to? No, it was just the church. Okay. So you've admitted that most of the popes were antichrist. So I think that proves my point that
Well, okay. So
overall the
let me
church
talk
has
about some
been
of the
a
things
force
that
for bad.
the church
Now we've
did
got
send people
one
all
minute
around
and
the world,
46 seconds
right,
left.
to
So
promote
I'm going to
Christianity.
wrap up very
There
quickly.
sometimes, and the
Don't
Catholic
forget the
Church has
time.
not always been evil. So I think that today
Yeah,
the
horribly.
established, again, the Pope himself and the people around him, yes, but the Catholic Church has not always been an evil church, and obviously not everybody in the Catholic Church was wicked and terrible and stuff. And I think that there were a lot of, and I would say even within that, there were a lot of very positive benefits that the Catholic Church provided for society.
Yeah.
They sent people all around the world to preach Christianity or to preach Catholicism. They saved Europe, right? So the Crusades, they saved Europe from the Muslim invaders. These were defensive wars. They're
Persecute,
absolutely the
take their
Muslims went all
babies
the way
away
to
from them.
Spain, and they're
Oh,
back in
nonsense.
Spain. They were in Spain last
Oh,
week, but
come on.
they went all the way
So,
to Spain, and it was the Catholic Church that fought them back.
so what? Britain went all over the world. The Romans went all over the world. It's not, oh, they're Muslim. That's worse because they're Muslim. Yeah,
Well,
lots of
you
people
want to
went
be
all
well.
over the
Let
world.
me
What about
ask
the
you this:
Mongols?
who
They
would you
all did
rather be
horrible,
under? Would you
dreadful things.
rather be
Anyway,
under
we've
the
got
rule of the Middle
33
Eastern
seconds left.
Islamic Empire, or would you rather be under the rule of the Anglican Church that you are now? Because technically, you're an Anglican, right? Yeah, but you're still no. Technically, you're still an Anglican.
I'm not under. I live in a secular state. I'm not under any church rules.
So,
no, that's nonsense. Look, we've got 9 seconds left. We're going to have to say goodnight, Nelson. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again. Okay.